You're watching OffBeat Business TV, brought to you from the Trade Group showroom floor in Carrollton, Texas. Have an awesome event every time. Schedule your consultation at tradegroup.com.
You're listening to the OffBeat Business Show, rebuilding American business influence locally, nationally, and abroad, bringing you experienced insight for a strong, influential brand and successful life in business. Here's your host, Susan Hamilton.
Well, hello there. You're watching OffBeat Business TV or listening to the OffBeat Business Show on the OBBM Network podcast. My name is Susan Hamilton, and today I am talking to John Chester. How are you doing, John?
Hey, Susan. It's really great to be here.
Hey, I'm excited to share you with our audience because we've had several conversations now as the way I do things around here as a host of this show. I like to really know who I'm talking to. I think it brings out really the best of what we want the audience to understand about what we're doing. And I love how you're impacting the community. When we started connecting on social media, we immediately had some things in common, and one of them was our intense desire to improve the mental health of our community.
Absolutely.
And to do it in such a way that it's relatable, right? And that we give them hope, because there's a lot of people suffering with depression and anxiety and all these things, and suicide's on the rise, and oh my goodness, and let alone the racism and all the other ways that we decide to revile each other. It's just become so contentious that it's a wild world. And you offer some really, really great opportunities to solve those problems in ways that folks our age can relate to now. And I love it. With the power of a positive playlist, John, is brilliant.
Thank you. It's something that I've been developing for about 26 years, I guess, professionally, but it's something I saw when I was a kid, because my dad was a pharmacist, and, the doctor would give him a piece of paper and say, dispense this to this person, and he would, hand the medicine out to the person, give them the instructions on how to use it. Well, I was watching people use music in such a way that it was either harmful or it was helpful. And the problem is people don't look at music as being that kind of catalyst. They don't see its abilities. They just think it's entertainment. And if you just view music as just entertainment, that's like playing with a loaded gun. It's a very dangerous thing. Don't get me wrong, it's still Freebird, it's still Sweet Home Alabama, it's still Rangstrom's Fifth Symphony, whatever you're listening to, but there's an emotional quotient that adds to it with back history and other things that you throw into the balance that can very much change its fancy word, efficacy, into what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it sounds like you're seeing solutions out there and you're able to offer them in communities where a lot of people are just saying, I haven't had any success.
Right.
And so when we're looking at what we hear, it's interesting because it resonates with me. And my dad always said, I came from a big family, I'm one of 6, and he always said, garbage in, garbage out.
Yep.
And he says, you know what? All your brain is a computer. It's only going to have what you put in it, so you have to be careful what you put in it.
Absolutely.
And of course, my rebellious self said, "Oh, let me see how many things I can put in it.
Yeah,
let me
I got
just see
tons of room in here.
Right? Let me just see what critical mass is, right?
Yes.
And I did that, and I had suffered the repercussions later, and had to get my act together.
Yeah.
Consequently, this next generation, I think, has seen things a whole lot worse than we did with Freebird. I think what we've got now is a generation out there that's really having trouble connecting in all kinds of ways, right? Facial cues, let alone the music is very different of this generation. It tends to objectify and isolate, rather than our music said we all got together and we had lighters like this, right?
Yeah.
We were all all one, but that's not how, it doesn't feel like that's the vibe out there today.
Well, yeah, that's part of that's perspective, because we're a little bit
Maybe
older.
So.
Yeah,
Maybe so.
Yeah, and I agree. But on the other hand, a couple nights ago, I dropped my 15-year-old daughter off at a concert, and it was a packed house at the Toyota Music Factory in Irving.
Yeah.
And there were tens of thousands of people there, and she had this very cool experience. However, the music is not exactly my bag. It was K-pop, Korean pop music, boy bands, kind of like what they were listening to here in America, and it's taken over the world with BTS and 17 and groups like that. Well, okay, so it doesn't work for you and me, but that's mainly because there's no emotional loading into the music for you and
That's
I.
probably true.
And so does it mean it's bad music? Absolutely not. Matter of fact, when she was bringing it to me saying, Dad, what do you think of this? And you know how our kids want kind of their parents' approval on their music, at least at first. After that, it's screw you and I'm going to play Black Sabbath. But Marilyn Manson, Alice Cooper, Alice rocks, baby. So, but we were emotionally loading into the music events.
Yeah.
We were... some were, not everybody was, but people were getting high to the music. They were getting laid to the music. They were having trauma, their divorce. There were horrific things happening to them. And all those things load into a part of the brain and the music twists into it. So then every time you hear that song, that event becomes dimensionally real. So it becomes a trigger. And though that's a horrific thing, you can change that by what you're listening to and the type of emotional investment you put into the song. So what you were talking about as far as social opportunities, they're out there. People who are a little bit older have to make a concerted effort to go out there and still experience it. Three Dog Night's still on tour. It's none of the original members, by the way. Chicago, I think, is on their last run, thank goodness. There's a lot of bands this year. The Stones are back out. McCartney and Ringo are out there on tour doing Lennon's work. And it offers social opportunities for people who are of that generation to have a social moment, because it's our generation, not the younger ones, that are having the greatest problem with social media addiction.
Interesting. That's fascinating little piece of information right there.
Yeah, not good,
You
but
know, one of the things that you're teaching is that there's power in a positive playlist, and we can start looking at what we are putting in to really determine the trajectory of the day, right? And consequently, the trajectory of your life.
Mm-hmm. It's a recipe. So I always pick on Pink Floyd. Now, make sure you understand, I love Pink Floyd, all right? I do. Their music is emotional, it's dramatic, and it's good musicianship. Now, but also it's a lot of trauma. Roger Waters was who wrote The Wall mainly. He was suffering with depression. An earlier band member of theirs was suffering from mental illness. He's since passed, Syd Barrett. And so they have this huge strain of mental issues for processing they throw into their music. People listen to it and they identify to it. As an example, several years ago, after I got out of a hospital, my mom told me, well, your friend John is having trouble. His wife left him, and he's been calling constantly for you. Why don't you go visit him? So I went over and visited him, and I knocked on the door, and I looked at him. He opened the door. Oh my gosh, he was horrible. He hadn't taken a bath. He was suffering from depression. I pushed past him, and he was listening to The Wall over and over. Now, it was on an LP, which is one of these long black things about this big, and you play it all the way around and music comes out instead of just scratching it back and forth. And he was listening to it, and he played side 1, side 2, pick it up, flip it over, side 3, side 4, and it played the whole album. And he felt like Waters and Gilmore and the rest of Mason were speaking to him.
Sounds like emotions were really just transferred, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so he wouldn't get off the album. So I took it away from him. I had to buy him the CD years later. But he had so emotionally identified with it that he wasn't getting it off. He was stuck. It literally was a broken record concept with him, and his emotions were tied into it. And so there are playlists that we build that create things like earworms, negative thoughts, horrific beliefs, and past trauma that tie into past trauma, and then give you this kind of chord in your life that just tells you to sit down. Just sit down. You don't need to be doing anything new, anything positive. You're not able, you're not capable, you're not in line for it. You never have been, so you won't be. So therefore, just go back and continue listening to Jeremiah Was a Bullfrog. That's all that matters.
Wow. John, that's so intense and true. And I know that's resonating with our audience right now, because we're in this space where we're building our business while we're raising our kids. We're taking care of our parents. We're doing this in a situation where we probably have EMTs, active duty, law enforcement, veterans in our family or workspace. We've got in all different generations of that, right? When we do, people that are civil servants, they've got generations of that in their family. And we're looking at all these things, and we may not even realize that those have become barriers for our growth, barriers to our communication. And at the same time, we want to have an inviting atmosphere for our businesses, right? And a healthy, build a healthy space, because as some of our cybersecurity segments of our programs will tell you, the types of dangers that are out there when we are not mentally healthy in the workplace, it's not hard to go off. No. So we've got to be proactive and pay attention to what we are putting around us and what we're listening to.
And music goes in through kind of a back door. Everybody learned their ABCs to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay. So information gets into us via music through a back door, and it sticks. So when you learn something, and by the way, Madison Avenue knows this. So when they are wanting you to like their product, they'll create a cool little jingle. So does TV shows, just sit right back and you'll hear a tale. Okay, great. Well, we all know what that is.
A little sonic branding, right?
Sonic is exactly what it is. And so when you go into a Kroger, kind of going off another direction, you go to Kroger and you start shopping, you listen to the music they're playing. They deliberately play music that is of the 60s and 70s, because I believe the number is around 68% of the shoppers have been polled and find that music makes them feel comfortable and safe. 50s and 60s is there, but less so. It's only like 30% or some smaller amount. 90 is almost dropped because, and I'm not saying I hate rap, but they're saying that rap music is not business friendly.
Isn't that interesting? Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to go hear from a few of our sponsors, and we're going to come back. Are you enjoying this conversation with John Chester as much as I am? Oh, my stars, you're about to learn so much about him on the OBBM Network. Listen to a few of our sponsors and come on back, because we've got more for you.
The American business economy is positioned as it has never been before. Professional videography is a core element for attracting a higher level of engagement with the people group you need for significant impact. Now is your time to shine. My name is Bill Brock, owner of White Rock Films, and I invite you to a powerful opportunity in the marketplace, an opportunity to draw excited people to your events, an opportunity to showcase your ideas on infrastructure, an opportunity to become known as the industry authority and enjoy the associated benefits of a strong, influential brand. Video highlights, video teaches. Video puts a resistant market at ease, and video stirs the hearts and imaginations of your allies and strategic client base. White Rock Films offers full audio, video production for businesses ready to embrace the future, handling your project with professionalism, experience, and polish unheard of in the industry. My name is Bill Brock, and White Rock Films wants your business. See us online at whiterockfilms.com.
And we're back. My name is Susan Hamilton. You're watching Offbeat Business TV or listening to the Offbeat Business Show on the OBBM Network podcast. We're talking with John Chester and really getting into some nitty-gritty about music and how it impacts you, friends. And what's interesting about this too, John, this whole conversation about how music impacts us is how you're using it as an effective therapy today in so many, many ways. And one of the things you mentioned was occupational therapy. Now, I thought that was interesting because I would not have thought music therapy had anything to do with physicality. So if you don't mind, just talk about that for a second so I don't miss that.
Right out of school, I was working at a head trauma clinic, and there was a patient of mine who had a motorcycle accident, and he had a lot of anger about it. And when he was going through his rehab, and he was doing the standard OT, occupational and physical therapy, PT, and he was doing counseling. And I found out that this person was also a championship fiddler. And he was very, very good at it, obviously. And he had never, though, touched his fiddle, his instrument, since the accident. And it wasn't because he couldn't play, even though he had a degree of impairment and poor range of motion. It was the anger that was keeping him from doing it. So I started with a different instrument just to antagonize him. That's the only thing I could say. I put a guitar in his hand, and I said, well, here, let's do this. And it was like, no, I'm a fiddler. I said, well, you don't want to touch your fiddle, so let's just do this. And we started working on the guitar, and he was going, well, this is a similar motion to a fiddle. I said, well, why don't we pick up the fiddle? And this is a course of a few weeks. Eventually, I got a fiddle back in his hand and the bow, and he just started doing the licks, which are yeah. So he starts doing the licks, yeah. And as he's doing it, he's going, well, this feels good, but he started to get a little angry that he wasn't as good as he used to be.
Yeah.
So I consulted with OT, and I said, what is it you want to work on? And they wanted, he was having impairment mainly in his two middle fingers. And so they were giving me some exercises, and I translated that to the fiddle and coordination with his right hand or with his other hand, and off we went.
So talk a little bit about your education in this space, and what does it mean to be a music therapist? Help educate our marketplace about that. In '87, I went back to college, and because I figured, I was an older student, I figured, gee, when I grow up, I want to be a musician. Well, I never grew up, but I eventually became a musician, and I heard while I was there about this new field to me called music therapy. A piano teacher told me. And I told a girl that I knew as well, and she was fascinated with it. And her options were limited to her because she didn't want to be a performer, even though she had the chops for it, to be either a teacher or a performer. So she was pretty much just going to line up to be that. Anyway, so I got my basic information and education at a community college, transferred and started to get the music therapy degree, which is the music therapy classes, the psych of music classes, abnormal psych. And back then it wasn't as standardized as it is now because there were some colleges that were putting the degree in the music building and some were putting it in the psych building. Anyway, I went and stopped at my bachelor's. And the reason why is at that time in '93, if you went to get your master's, and there was no PhD at the time, you were just really going to be doing research. I didn't want to do research. I wanted to work with people. So I did that and went right into the workforce and started doing that. My education, and then there's an internship of 6 months. I did mine at the Cole Marie O'Neill VA Hospital in Topeka, Kansas. Had a lot of wonderful experiences, and I worked with a lot of vets from World War I forward. Now, all the World War I vets have passed. But did have a lot of experience with World War II, Vietnam, and the Iraqi Desert Storm, which had just really fired up at that time. Yeah, and there's so many differences in the way that they recover between those wars for the how quickly they came back. Totally valid conversation that needs to be had more frequently.
Yep.
You'll be able to get more of that on the OBBM Network as well coming up. But that's interesting that you've learned in all these ways that this is PTSD recovery, right? And a lot of people really don't believe that those things can be recovered. A lot of people feel like when it comes to the brain, that once it snaps, that's all there is to it. And I know in my own personal experience what I've seen, our brains are amazing and we're not patient enough with them.
Right.
We're not patient. It takes a little bit of time to actually have healing.
Yep.
And I shout it from the rooftops, friends, brains heal. That's exciting. And I don't care what those issues are, brains heal. And so I'm grateful that you're bringing that message to our audience.
Well, thank you. And the reality is, back in the day, they used to think once that part of the brain is damaged, you'll never get whatever that part of the brain was doing back again, be it hands or speech and such. Now we know the brain is like a traffic jam in some ways. And if one area gets damaged, there's a backup. The brain remaps itself enough to where other skills can be used in other parts of the brain.
Sounds like you're talking about neuroplasticity.
There you go. That's right. I'm not big on jargon, but you're exactly right. That's what it is. And it enables us beyond what we're ever thought we could do, is to reallocate the brain in different ways to heal. With working at the VA hospital, for example, they had sessions people were supposed to sit down at 9 o'clock, they listened to classical. At 10 o'clock, it was jazz, and 11 o'clock, it was rock and roll. Just sitting in this room, quiet, had posters, pretty laid back, but it gave them time to process. And healthy people, I'm talking about people who don't have any mental issues or any PTSD or any drug issues or whatever. I'm talking about just have yourself some time to listen to music that is designed to help you process. And I came in and, Mr. Smarter Than You, arrogance kind of thing. I sat down and I brought in my own classical music. They were playing Bach. I brought in Mahler. Bach was perfect for what they were doing. I ended up emptying the clinic one time because I brought in Mahler, which is this 20th century composer, and they couldn't process to it. That talks about not just listening to classical music and go sit down and go to sleep. It's the type of music. Bach's very organized. Mahler is not organized the same way. It's the difference between spaghetti and macaroni and cheese.
Or, acid rock.
Yeah. And we used to believe people who listen to Screamo and acid rock are just a bunch of angry drug heads and all.
Right.
People who listen to the Screamo, headbanger, whatever you want to call it, these people actually have very good anger management skills and can handle trauma faster and really just manage the changes of life. Is it to the music? Because of the music? Probably.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, I'm excited to share you with people and help them to see how the different types of therapies can make a difference with the Power of a Positive playlist. I love the message, and I love how we can be proactive at how we put together the things as we chart our day, as we chart the trajectory of our business, successful life, and really putting some things together. And before we go, I also just want to point out how cool it is that you do know your kids' music and you do know the bands. I went to a wedding not long ago and it really, really moved me because every generation in that family was on the floor dancing to every piece of music, and that in of itself is not that unusual. But they knew the words and they were all out there, and those kids knew the words of their parents' generation's music, and the parents knew the music of the generation of the teenagers. The grandparents did, and they were singing along, and it impressed me so much. I thought, wow, I could just tell that in that moment I knew that this combined family, combined families, my husband and I have a combined family, we had a 60% failure rate. But this group, we beat the odds. There's nothing happening, and this family's going to too, because they're thinking about things proactively, cross-generationally, and it's making a big, big difference.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, music can be very much a part of that because it's a great meeting space for people.
Wonderful. So how does our audience get in touch with you?
I am at ivorchester.com, and you can reach me at Facebook at Had Enough Guy, Ivor Chester there, Ivor Chester 3 at Twitter and Instagram.
That is fabulous, friends. Know that if you're driving down the road and you're listening to this and you didn't have a chance to write it down, which I hope you did not, if you're listening to the OBBM radio, know that you can go back into the OffBeat Business app. All this information is right in there, and you'll find the links that you want to find. All of that's going to accompany the video and the audio production of this show, and you're going to be able to work with John Chester. And you're also going to be seeing him in upcoming episodes as he comes on the OBBM Network to help you see what it is that we can do proactively in our community. So I just want to get heads up to that and get you excited about it. Until next time, you've been watching OffBeat Business TV or listening to the OffBeat Business Show on the OBBM Network podcast.
You've been listening to the OffBeat Business Show. Find our lineup, podcast, magazine, event calendar, and sponsor information, even our membership directory, all available on the OffBeat Business app or at offbeatbusiness.com. Download the OffBeat Business app today.